BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. We just have a very quick mini upload to go through because it feels like every time we talk about Marianne Williamson, it always feels like it's just going to come out in at least two uploads. We got to do something a little bit bigger and then, of course, a mini upload because there's a lot to say. And when you're talking about, politicians, there's really just an endless amount of material. I mean, that's why some people talk about this for 3 hours a day on some of the bigger radio programs. But it is now January of 2020, and we just passed the Christmas holiday back in December. And when you're with relatives together, you often talk about politics and you get into disagreements and all that. And I made a comment to somebody that I thought that Marianne Williamson would make a good Secretary of Education. What I was saying was, okay, I mean, fair enough. I do not think that she is going to win the Democratic nomination, but I thought she would be a good Secretary of Education if a Democrat ended up in the White House defeating Donald Trump in 2020. And I had a family member who took a very big exception to that, saying that Marianne Williamson is crazy. I thought that was a very quite surprising thing to say. It's not like just simply saying Marianne Williamson is crazy, as opposed to disagreeing with any of the policies that she had put forward, any of the statements that she had put forward, and we went back and forth a little. Neither side is kind of really too invested in what the other person had to say, probably. But when you think about it, though, Marianne Williamson as a Secretary of Education, every time they introduce her on TV, of course they call her a presidential candidate now, but her primary title that they would give her would be spiritual teacher. And if you would compare somebody like Marianne Williamson to who we have now as Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, absolutely Marianne Williamson would be a better Secretary of Education than Betsy DeVos. But just look at some of the things that Marianne Williamson has really talked about in terms. I'm on her campaign website just going through the platform that she discusses: anti-poverty, talking about reparations, animal protections, a whole student plan for K through 12, child advocacy, and some very interesting things like she supports the cabinet level Department of Peace. And on this channel before, we've mentioned Steven Pinker and the Better Angels of Our Nature, where they say, okay, cabinet level Department of Peace, things like peacekeepers, peacekeeping forces, those things are not perfect. But according to the Better Angels of Our Nature by Steven Pinker, there actually is a reduction in violent deaths worldwide, partially due to the actions of these peacekeeping units. In short, they work. They are successful overall. So that is a good thing to have. And that type of mindset that Marianne Williamson would bring to something like the Department of Education, because she's also for the U.S. Department of Children and Youth. That's something that she wants to start as well. That's also on her campaign platform right here. And I would have to say this is another very standard practice, because many nations around the world have a Department of Youth or a Ministry of Youth. This is a very normal thing to have. I mean, that's not an outrageous, far-out, crazy claim like my one relative sort of said. What I believe the public perception of Marianne Williamson comes down to is people think that perhaps she might be involved with things like crystals. And when we did a previous upload on her, I was even critical of her for talking about the dark psychic force in the way that she described it, because I was like, people are going to hear that and then they're just going to think, oh, you're talking about you having psychic powers and you can manipulate spiritual energy and all that. That's what the general public's going to hear. And that's how I got into this whole argument with somebody about the particular subject. But Marianne Williamson was on CNN once, and they were talking about the possibility of Marianne Williamson, like post-campaign, post-election, 2021, 2022, and they're like, what would her future be? And the person who was interviewing her, I don't even remember who it was, but they were saying that it's possible that you could be running for cabinet positions, that you could be in the line for a cabinet position. And then I just began to think that, Marianne Williamson, what would she do in a cabinet? Like, what would she be? And then instantly it's just like Secretary of Education, because of her role in the past as a spiritual teacher, and just the whole concept of integrity and values, the politics of love, the whole need for honesty in the political system, and putting that into the educational system. Not to mention, if you get a chance to read A Politics of Love, the introductory parts, like beginnings, the beginnings are all about just the need for civics education and just talking about how we need to have a greater understanding of not only the United States Constitution and not only the law, but it's just civics in general. How does the law function? How does it affect people? And restoring that sense of integrity and actually having people talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and believe it and in every fiber of their being. Until we get to that level when people think about that all men are created equal, all humans are equal in every fiber of our being, we will not have political change. And it's really going to begin with education. And I mean, it's not like I endorse Marianne Williamson for president. I mean, on this channel, we don't really have any specific endorsements for anything because, well, it's just, I mean, it's not that valuable to get an endorsement from Black Box Online Radio or anything. But the person that was interviewing her that said she might be in line for cabinet positions made the claim. She followed it up by saying, but I don't think that's you. I think you're in it to win it. Now, I think a lot of people who are running for president, or perhaps every single person who is running for president, maybe give or take a few exceptions, they want to be president. But a lot of people who run for president, let's not kid ourselves, they have the somewhat of the understanding that they most likely will not win. And even somebody like John Delaney, who I mean, he would love to be president. He has the understanding that he will most likely not win. Or Deval Patrick, Tom Steyer. These people know that they most likely will not become president. Well, why are they doing it? I mean, this is the absolute most valuable thing that they can do for their careers, is to run for office. And it's something that we've mentioned before in the past. That I heard this in an interview with Darrell W. Perry back when he was running for the Libertarian nomination in 2015, and the 2015, the primaries. And what he was saying was that sometimes people will only take your ideas seriously if you are running for office. People will listen to you if you are running for office. And I mean, I will tell you, it's like, I mean, if you just want to get on YouTube and just put out a daily podcast segment or something like that, you don't necessarily reach the largest amount of people possible. And I was reading an article from the New York Post when they're talking about some, the ratings in between other New York radio hosts, and I clicked on it pretty much by mistake, I think. But there was one thing in there when they're talking about how they have famous radio hosts in New York, and in radio, not everybody has the ability to be heard. And I read that one line, that one sentence in this article from the New York Post, and I was like, yeah. I mean, like, once again, though, I mean, if you just create content and put it out online, not everybody's necessarily going to hear it. And prior to running for president, I really don't think Marianne Williamson was that famous. Of course, she ran for Congress as an independent, trying to represent the 33rd District of California, but she was unsuccessful in that attempt. She moved to Iowa, and, I mean, she's put in an enormous amount of effort into the campaign, but I heard recently that she had to lay off almost the entirety of her campaign staff because of things mostly due to financing and fundraising. But I really do commend Marianne Williamson for staying in the race, even though she didn't qualify for certain debates, because her brand of politics, I said this in the absolute first upload that I did on her, has been missing from the Democratic primary for a long time. The kind of eco-conscious spiritual side, the people who watch the Gaia Network, what Tim Ryan called the yoga vote. I mean, it's so much bigger than yoga. That's why Tim Ryan ran a horrible campaign and he's out of the race. Thank goodness. But the thing is, though, it's just like that brand of politics was missing from the Democratic Party. But Marianne Williamson is very much involved with education, and I don't believe that she's crazy. I just simply don't believe that. I think that she is obviously has a good understanding of certain things that have been neglected in our educational system. And we've talked about the things like civics education. We talked about the things for having integrity to values and trying to live up to the standards that we've actually set in our founding documents. But is also just the things about having the cabinet of children and youth and the department level cabinet of peace, the cabinet level department of peace, excuse me. Just the fact that she wants to bring these things into the government period shows that there's a certain sense of passion for humanity. There's a certain sense of appreciation for the human spirit that I don't find in all the presidential candidates, and I think you can think of a few names. But anyway, that's what I would have to say. What would you think of somebody like Marianne Williamson being Secretary of Education? What's your response to that? And If not, then like who do you think would be a better person to fill that role? I know that's a very broad question. We don't often have responses for that prepared and such, but I would just love to hear what you would have to say about that. And if you have anything to say, please drop a comment below. If you like this upload, you can hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed already, you're welcome to subscribe. This is our mini upload for the day. Until next time.